"Don't touch my kids," my mom said as she threw me out at 17. 13 years later, she showed up broke, begging me to pay for the sons she chose over me. Being the unexpected child means spending your entire childhood working to earn a place in your own home. Sometimes the answer remains no. I am now 35 years old and make $155,000 as a senior project manager in commercial construction. I own my 4-bedroom house entirely. Purchased it as a foreclosure. I fixed it myself. I paid it off after a major promotion. I paid off my F-150. Savings are piled. Not bad for someone who was kicked out at the age of 17 because they did not fit in with the new family. Mom gave birth to me at the age of 21. Bio. Dad fled as soon as he heard about the pregnancy. There is no help. Nothing. We lived over my grandparents' garage while she finished nursing school. She worked tirelessly, but Grandpa raised me. He taught me how to work, mend things, and hold my ground. When I was 9, my mother met Bradley Hayes in the hospital. Family therapist with a psychology degree. Nice money and nice image. They married when I was 12 and we moved into his 4-bedroom colonial. Bradley Hayes was not blatantly mean. He treated me as if I didn't matter. Dinners degenerated into future chats, during which I was nodded at and ignored. When I was 13, my mother became pregnant with twins, Mason Reed and Aiden Cole. Her pregnancy was difficult, so I started running the household. Laundry, food, mowing, and grading. I figured being productive would keep me in the family. When the twins were delivered in April, everyone was completely shocked. Relatives swarmed. Bradley Hayes took time off. The home went into non-stop baby mode. And I was virtually erased. Not a busy parent. As if she had ceased seeing me altogether. So I did what children do when they believe love is earned. I tried harder. Straight A's, chores, being quiet and remaining unseen. It turns out that you cannot act your way into being wanted. I lived in that house from the ages of 13 to 17 and hardly existed. By the age of 17, when the twins were 5, I'd mastered the art of becoming invisible. Bradley Hayes spoke as if Mason Reed and Aiden Cole were the only children on earth. My guys needed this. My guys were doing that. Never the children, never the family, never anything involving me. Very courteous for a man hired to help families communicate. If they remembered, my birthday present was a gas station gift card and a crumpled $25 bill. The twins' birthday party featured a bouncy house, a face painter, and a swarm of preschoolers trashing the yard. Bradley Hayes grilled like it was a television show. Mom is always posting about her lovely babies on social media. So I stopped expecting anything. I concentrated on school, worked weekends at an auto shop and saved every penny because my instinct suggested I'd need to go. My gut was correct. I just hadn't realized how soon. One Tuesday evening in October of my junior year, I arrived home after my shift at the shop at 6:30 p.m. Mom and Bradley Hayes had gone to a business gathering. She stated it in the morning. The babysitter they typically hired had to cancel at the last minute. So they determined I was old enough to babysit the twins for a few hours. It was the first time they trusted me with it. I was really looking forward to it. I wondered whether this was an indication that they were starting to view me as part of the family again. When I went home, I found the twins watching cartoons. It seemed fine. Everything was usual. Aiden Cole became cranky about 8 o'clock. Then Mason Reed came in. They were both weeping and claiming they wanted their mother. I tried everything. I offered food, put on their favorite TV, and suggested we create something with their blocks. Nothing worked. They simply continued wailing louder. Mason Reed was on the verge of a complete breakdown, the type that causes children to gasp for air. I took him up and held him on my hip in the same manner I had seen my mother do 100 times. I bounced him a little and assured him everything was fine. Mom would be home soon, just trying to calm him down before he made himself ill. That is when I heard the front door open. Mom and Bradley Hayes went in, and what they saw was me holding Mason Reed as Aiden Cole wept on the couch. Mom's expression changed from worry to wrath in about half a second, before I could explain or say anything. She darted across the room and snatched Mason Reed from my arms. The child was scared and sobbed even more. "What did you do to them?" she questioned, looking Mason Reed over as if I had heard him. "Nothing. They just wanted you." I was trying to calm him down. The smack came out of nowhere, powerful enough to whip my head to the side and cause my ear to ring. I just stood there shocked, hand on my face. "Don't you ever touch them," she yelled. Bradley Hayes stood between us, and his face made my stomach plummet. Not worry, not bewilderment, but revulsion. "Why would you touch my kids?" His voice was chilly and professional, perhaps the same tone he used with patients he had previously dismissed. "What's wrong with you?" They were crying. You were supposed to watch them, not put your hands on them. He got closer, squeezing into my space. I knew it was a mistake. We knew we could not trust you around them. Something within me cracked. 4 years of being invisible and treated as if I didn't matter. And now this. I shoved him back. Not hard. Just enough to get him away from my face. Back off. I didn't do anything wrong. Bradley Hayes grabbed my shirt and drew me closer. You stinky little piece of trash. You put your filthy hands on my boy. You're done here. Get him out, Mom said, her voice quivering with rage. Get him out of this house right now. You're insane, I said, gazing at each of them. I was watching them like you asked. They got upset. I was trying to help. Mom's face contorted into something unpleasant. No one will ever love you. You're going to die alone and miserable, and you'll deserve it. The words landed harder than the smack. I just gazed at her, at the lady who was meant to be my mother, and all I saw was hatred. Bradley Hayes hauled me to the door. Get your stuff and get out. You've got 18 minutes before I call the cops and tell them you assaulted me and did something inappropriate with those boys. That threat silenced me. I looked at Mom, expecting her to say something, to tell him he was insane. She simply stood there, clutching Mason Reed, her countenance blank. I walked to my room in a fog, grabbed 2 duffel bags, and began shoving everything inside. Clothes, laptop, school books, and box of photographs with Grandpa. My hands were so shaky that I could scarcely zip the bags. I kept repeating what had happened, trying to make sense of it. 18 minutes later, I passed them on my way out. They were seated in the living room with the twins, who had already settled down. Probably forgot what they were weeping over. I paused at the entrance and turned around. You're both sick, and you're going to regret this. Bradley Hayes grinned. The only regret here is that we wasted 17 years on you. Your own mom thinks you're a waste of space. Then they laughed. Good luck finding someone who will care about you. I went 2 miles to my grandparents' house in the dark. Those duffel bags ripped into my shoulders the whole trip. My cheeks still ached from the slap she gave me. My ears were still ringing. What hurt the most was realizing that after 17 years, it was all I was worth to her. An allegation and 18 minutes to pack. Grandpa opened the door, took one look at me standing there with my baggage and my face scarlet from the smack, and his expression hardened. What happened? I told him everything. The twins were weeping, and I tried to help. Accusation, slap, and threats. I saw his expression darken with each phrase. That's it, he stated calmly. We're done with her. Grandma arrived behind him, noticed me and quickly drew me inside. She started weeping before I could finish explaining. Did she strike you? What about her own son? She's made her decision, Grandpa replied, placing his hand on my shoulder. And we have made ours. You're ours now. Not just tonight, but for good. Something snapped that first night, as I stared at the ceiling in the spare bedroom. I was finished with her. I'm done hoping she'll remember I exist. I'm done waiting for her to pick me up. It was only me now. And it felt wonderful to know where I stood. My grandparents did more than simply provide me with shelter and food. They went to war for me. Within 3 days, Grandfather called a lawyer regarding guardianship. Mom readily signed temporary custody paperwork without first speaking with me. Probably wanted to prevent CPS or police investigating what truly happened that night. By the end of the week, I was legally in their custody. They cut her off entirely. Grandpa wanted to make a police report on Bradley Hayes' threats, but the lawyer advised him against it. He stated that securing custody was the top objective, and she stated that the case may drag out or force Mom to fight guardianship. It's better to get me safe now than deal with the repercussions later. They changed their wills, stopped receiving her calls, and declared her dead to them. When family inquired about what had transpired, Grandpa gave them the truth. She slapped our grandson, kicked him out, and blamed him for things he didn't do to justify it. We're finished. I spent the following 3 years working 22 to 28 hours a week at the neighborhood hardware shop. That money went towards school supplies, clothes, and petrol for the beat-up automobile that Grandpa had given me. My grades dropped from straight A's to primarily B's, yet I still graduated with a 3.5. Good enough. Mom remained mute. There were no texts or calls for birthdays, holidays, or graduations. I only hear about their nicer automobiles, the twins' large parties, and weekend beach getaways. It's funny how concerns about inappropriate conduct faded once I wasn't their financial burden. Senior year, I was accepted into a couple institutions. Even with scholarships, I needed a loan, which required an adult cosigner. When I told it over supper with my grandparents, my Aunt Renee Parker did not flinch. She stated she would co-sign. I attempted to protest, but she shut it off. She'd seen me work hard since I was sent out, and she wasn't about to let me miss out on college because of my mother. College was terrible. I worked on university, worked weekend overnight shifts at a warehouse, performed odd jobs, learned myself basic CAD, and freelance designs for small contractors. Sleep was optional. Mom remained mute. I periodically saw her immaculate family posts through relatives and eventually blocked her. Not my pastime. 5 years later, I invited Renee Parker to the graduation. She arrived early and celebrated as if she had won too. My mom had no idea I was graduating. I did not inform her. After graduation, I accepted an entry-level project coordinator position with a commercial construction business located 2.5 hours away. Started at $42,000, moved into a small apartment, lived cheaply, and worked as if my job was the only thing keeping the lights on. I learned everything, took additional tasks, and continued to climb up. By my late 20s, I'd paid off the most of my loans and began saving actively. At 27, I discovered a repossessed 4-bedroom home in need of repair. I got it cheap. I spent evenings and weekends sprucing it up myself. Everything Grandpa taught me eventually paid off. We took out a modest mortgage to complete the transaction, but the monthly payments were affordable. By my late 20s, I'd amassed significant funds and had the good apartment mostly refurbished. Mom and I maintained no communication. Then, around the age of 32, I was promoted to senior PM, and my salary increased from $82,000 to $155,000. The rise was huge. Within 4 years, I had paid off the mortgage completely and increased my savings even further. I kept it quiet. The only one I informed was Renee Parker. She discussed it during a family gathering in the hopes that it would help things thaw. That's what ignited the fuse. About a week after Renee Parker's slip, I had a knock on my door late on a Saturday afternoon. Wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole and saw Mom and Bradley Hayes standing there. I hadn't seen either of them in over a decade. I couldn't think of a good reason why they were on my doorstep right now. I gently opened the door, but did not move aside or welcome them in. They surged past me into my home without waiting for an invitation. Bradley Hayes went right to it. I heard about your promotion. It took you long enough to make anything of yourself. No hello. No, how have you been? Simply a backhanded remark masquerading as a compliment. Mom interrupted before I could answer. Mason Reed and Aiden Cole require assistance with college fees. Things have grown tighter recently. We assumed you could help out now that you're doing so well. I stood there for a long time, absorbing. After more than a decade of quiet after everything they'd done, they had the audacity to turn up and demand payment. The balls are on these individuals. I folded my arms and leaned against the wall, very calm. You've got about 45 seconds to get out of my house before I make you leave. Bradley Hayes sneered. Don't be dramatic, you're making good money now. No wife, no kids draining your resources. You've clearly got money sitting there. Stop acting like you can't afford to help your own brothers. I laughed without humor. My brothers? These children have nothing to do with me. You made this quite evident when you booted me out and threatened to lie to the cops about me. Remember that? Mom's face stiffened. Oh, wonderful. Poor you. We had a difficult decision when you were younger. Get over it already. Look at you now. You came out nicely. Yeah. I said it's getting colder. No thanks to any of you. I worked my way through college with no support from you. Made it happen despite you, not because of you. So let me simplify this for both of you. The answer is no. Not a single cash or penny. You are not receiving anything from me. Bradley Hayes took a step closer, hoping to frighten me with his bulk. Perhaps you should thank us. If we hadn't pushed you out, you probably wouldn't be where you are now. We did you a favor. The least you can do is assist your family when they need it. I stood up, met his gaze firmly, and did not back down an inch. Thank you. To justify tossing out your stepson, you accused him of improper behavior around youngsters. You threatened to lie to the police. I made the youngsters believe I had wounded them while attempting to assist. And now you want me to bail out your ideal family. That is an impressive sum. Mom's voice became harsh. You are being selfish. I reared you on my own. I worked my tail hard to keep you alive. Now that you have everything, we'd like to ask for a little help from your siblings. You owe them at least that amount. I don't owe them anything, I insisted firmly. You made certain decisions about me. I decided I didn't deserve your time, attention, or money. That's your responsibility. I'm not going to put my life or my money at risk for youngsters you told me were unsafe around. The reasoning does not add up, does it? If I was such a threat back then, why would you want me to aid them now? Bradley Hayes' cheeks became crimson. Do you know what your problem is? You have always been bitter. I always felt you were exceptional. You assume you're superior than your family just because you have a good job. But allow me to tell you something. You meant nothing to our family then, and you still don't. I just grinned. So why are you here? If I don't mean anything, why are you begging for money? Sounds desperate. It sounds like you need me more than I need you, Mom snapped. Because we did not want to come here. Do you believe we love asking for your help? However, Mason Reed and Aiden Cole deserve a future. And if you weren't so selfish, you would notice it. They deserve better parents who did not make poor decisions, I stated quietly. That is not my problem. Now go out of my home. Bradley Hayes pointed at my face, his voice increasing. You'd better watch your mouth. We are still your family, whether you like it or not. I took a step forward, directly into his space. I watched him instinctively take a half step back. Family does not do what you did. Families do not slap their children, accuse them of horrible things, and then throw them out with only 18 minutes to pack. You are not my family. You're just strangers who showed up hoping to guilt trip me into solving problems you created. It is not happening. Mom's expression twisted. Okay, be a selfish brat, but don't come crying to us if your perfect life falls apart. You believe you are far superior to everyone else, but you are nothing special. You will always be nothing. Just as I told you that night, nobody will ever love you. You will die alone. If that's true, I replied quietly. At the very least, I will die knowing that I did not become like you. Finally, get out. Go ahead, Bradley Hayes said, hoping to reclaim some ground. Call the police. See how it looks. Calling the police on your own parents. I took out my phone. Already dialing. You aren't my parents. You forfeited that right when you hit me and threw me out. You have 12 seconds before the cops arrive to remove trespassers. Mom grabbed Bradley Hayes' arm. This isn't over, she yelled toward me. You're going to regret this. Everyone's going to see what kind of person you really are. No, I replied, holding the door open and holding the phone to my ear. Everyone's going to see what kind of people you really are. I promise you that. They left. I gave the dispatcher my address and described the situation. They dispatched an officer to take a report. I documented everything. That conversation was not only satisfying, it explained everything I needed to know. They'd come thinking they could manipulate, guilt, and intimidate me. Instead, they'd encountered a man who had spent over a decade transforming himself into someone they couldn't approach. Someone who did not require their approval, affection, or recognition. Someone was finally prepared to go nuclear. I thought that confrontation would be the end of it. Should have known they wouldn't give up so easily. 3 weeks later, I learned from concerned coworkers that Mom had arrived at my office. I had taken a sick day, which likely saved me from a worse situation. But, according to what I've heard, she marched into the lobby of our secure commercial building, demanded to speak with me, and when security informed her I wasn't there, she refused to leave, began shouting about family obligations and sacrifices, and how ungrateful I was, and became aggressive. Building security eventually had to physically escort her off the property. Several co-workers witnessed the entire thing. It was embarrassing as hell. The next day at work felt terrible. I apologized to everyone who'd seen that nightmare. Went straight to HR, explained the situation, had her name added to the official list of people not permitted on company premises, and had her photo on file with building security. The whole thing was embarrassing, but she still wasn't done. That same week I got home from work and found her waiting outside my house, pacing up and down my driveway, clearly agitated. The second I got out of my truck with my work bag, she stormed over. You can't keep ignoring me. We need to talk about this right now. I kept my distance, keys in my hand. What are you doing here? I told you we're done. We need to have a real conversation. You can't just walk away from your responsibilities to your brothers. What responsibilities? You're the parent. Mason Reed and Aiden Cole are your kids, not mine. Figure it out yourself. That set her off completely. Started screaming about how selfish and ungrateful I was. How I owed her everything for raising me alone. I sacrificed everything for you, she shouted. And this is how you repay me? You didn't sacrifice anything for me. Go home. Don't show up here again. Her voice went from loud to hysterical. Started yelling so loudly that neighbors began coming out to see what was happening. He's a brat, she screamed, gesturing at me. Always been selfish. Doesn't care about anyone but himself. Several neighbors tried to calm her down, but she was way past hearing anyone. Then she actually lunged at me, still screaming. Stay back. I warned, already dialing 911. I mean it. Don't you dare call the police on your own mother, she shrieked, trying to grab the phone from my hands. I raised you. I sacrificed everything. You abandoned me, I said loudly, holding the phone away. Threw me away like garbage. One of my neighbors yelled that he was also calling the cops. Another physically stepped in and pulled her back. By that point, sirens were already cutting through the evening air. The responding officers separated us, took statements from me and multiple witnesses. Mom tried to play the victim, crying about how I'd turned my back on my struggling family. But 3 neighbors had seen her lunge at me, heard her screaming. One had even started recording on his phone. The officers didn't arrest her, treated it like a family dispute, separated us, gave her a stern warning, documented everything, and told me I should get a restraining order if this continued. Classic domestic call response. They filed the incident report, and left. She sat in her car at the end of the street for another hour before driving away. But that incident was the push I needed because while she was sitting in her car that night, I was inside my house making a decision. Time to find out exactly why they were really broke and make sure everyone knew the truth. Next morning, I took time off work and went to the police station, filed for the restraining order based on the workplace incident and the driveway assault. The officer who'd responded the night before had filed a detailed report with witness statements, which helped move things along. But before the hearing, I did my homework and I wanted to know exactly what had destroyed their finances. 2 nurses making decent money don't go from comfortable to desperate overnight. Started with Bradley Hayes' professional license. Public records are public for a reason. The state licensing board website had everything laid out. License suspended pending investigation. Formal complaint filed by 3 former clients. Ethics violations, including inappropriate dual relationships, boundary violations, and improper termination of therapeutic relationships. The details were clinical, but damning. Kept digging. Found the civil lawsuits next. Bradley Hayes being sued by 2 former patients for emotional distress and malpractice. One case involved him developing a personal relationship with a vulnerable client and then abruptly ending therapy when it got complicated. Another involved him taking on a client while simultaneously having a social relationship with that client's spouse. Basic ethics violations that any first-year therapist knows to avoid. But it got worse. Found allegations in court filings about a federal audit. Medicaid and Medicare fraud investigation with claims Bradley Hayes had been billing for sessions that never happened. Billing couples therapy when only one person attended. Upcoding session types to get higher reimbursements. Public docket entries laid it out. Systematic billing issues that don't happen by accident. The hospital cut ties with him immediately when the investigation started. His malpractice insurance dropped him. He was looking at potential criminal charges, massive civil penalties, and complete financial ruin. The man who made his living telling people how to fix their lives couldn't follow basic professional ethics. The hypocrisy was almost funny if it wasn't so pathetic. A family therapist who specialized in helping families communicate and maintain boundaries, who'd built his career on professional ethics and helping vulnerable people, had systematically violated every rule in the book. And the same man who'd accused his teenage stepson of inappropriate behavior with children had been engaging in inappropriate relationships with vulnerable adult clients. I compiled everything, every board action, every lawsuit, every audit notice, public records anyone could verify. When I told my grandparents everything, they were furious. "She's lost her mind," Grandpa said, shaking his head. "Coming after you like this while her husband destroys everything through his own choices." Grandma's voice was heavy with disgust. A therapist. Someone people trusted to help them. And he was using them like that. Sick. "They deserve each other," I said. "And they're going to get exactly what they deserve." The restraining order hearing came about 4 weeks later. Judge reviewed the police reports, witness statements, and documented harassment pattern. Mom showed up with some story about being a concerned parent. Tried the tears, but the evidence spoke louder than her performance. Judge granted a 4-year order without much deliberation. After the order went into effect, the direct harassment stopped. No more showing up at my work or house. But she found workarounds. Started calling me from different numbers. Blocked every single one. Sent letters to my house that went straight into my documentation folder. Got relatives to reach out on her behalf with messages about how she just wanted to talk and work things out. I shut that down immediately, told them I had no interest in reconciliation and they needed to stop carrying her messages. Most family members backed off after that. She even tried showing up at my grandparents' house a few times, demanding they make me see reason. My grandparents called her out hard every time, told her to leave and never come back. When she refused the 3rd time, Grandpa called the cops himself. They gave her a citation for trespassing and reminded her about the restraining order. Coming to my grandparents' house to harass them about me counted as indirect contact. That finally got her to back off for a while. Life finally started looking normal again. I threw myself into work, my house, and the people who actually mattered. My grandparents, Renee Parker, a couple close friends. I installed security cameras, kept my documentation folder updated, and focused on moving forward. A few months after things quieted down, I started taking care of the people who'd taken care of me. First was my grandparents. I paid for the new roof they'd been putting off, covered their property taxes for the year, and set up a medical fund so they'd never have to stress about bills again. They tried to refuse. I told them it wasn't negotiable. They gave me everything when I had nothing. Renee Parker was next. I didn't want to just repay her. I wanted her to feel what she did for me. So, I planned a long weekend trip to the Grand Canyon for her whole family, something she'd talked about for years but never did because she was always putting everyone else first. I covered flights, a decent hotel, and gave her spending money for food and activities so she could actually enjoy it without doing mental math the whole time. When I handed her the envelope, she opened it and just froze. "What's this?" "It's for you." I told her you showed up when nobody else did. You deserve something good. She started shaking her head, saying she didn't help me for anything back. I told her that was the point. She hugged me so hard I could barely breathe. And for the first time in a long time, I felt what it's like to be valued instead of tolerated. Of course, word got around fast. Renee Parker was excited and told family. Within days it got back to Mom, and she lost her mind. She started calling from new numbers, leaving increasingly unhinged voicemails about how I could afford vacations and gifts but wouldn't pay for my brother's college, accusing me of rubbing my success in her face, asking how I could give money to anyone else when family was struggling. Every voicemail went straight into the documentation folder. Mason Reed and Aiden Cole started reaching out too, probably through relatives or Mom handing them my number. Same energy. Not humble, not sincere. Just entitled, bitter, jealous. Why was I playing favorites with Renee Parker? Why did I think I was too good for them? Why was I being petty? I didn't respond. I saved everything. And that was the last straw. I'd been patient. I'd documented the harassment. And I'd given them every chance to back off. They didn't. So I decided it was time to make sure everyone knew exactly who they were and what they'd done. I started by writing everything out. Not an emotional rant, just a clean timeline with receipts. The night I was 17, twins crying, me trying to help, the slap, the accusations, the threats, the decade of silence, then Mom and Bradley Hayes showing up demanding money. After that, the workplace scene, the driveway incident, the restraining order, and Mason Reed and Aiden Cole's entitled messages. The real leverage was Bradley Hayes' professional collapse. I didn't vaguely reference it. I linked the state licensing board documents showing his suspended license, included redacted excerpts from the ethics complaints showing the pattern of boundary violations and dual relationships, and attached links to the civil lawsuits and fraud investigation. All public record, all verifiable. The story basically wrote itself. A family therapist obsessed with ethics and boundaries, violating the rules for years. The same guy who accused his teenage stepson of being inappropriate, then threw him out with threats. And once the consequences hit, they came looking for money from the kid they discarded. I didn't post it publicly. That would have been a mess. I sent it directly to the family members who mattered and who Mom had been working for sympathy. My grandparents, siblings, cousins, key people in the extended family. Every claim backed by documents, public records, and screenshots. I attached one note. Since there's confusion, here's the timeline with documentation. Draw your own conclusions. The reaction wasn't instant because real family drama isn't a movie. Over the next few weeks, relatives reached out privately to apologize for buying her version. A few admitted they'd been considering helping her financially and were glad they saw the truth first. Others were disgusted by Bradley Hayes' violations, especially the ones who had connections to the mental health world or knew people who'd seen him as a therapist. That's where it really hurt. Word spread through his former colleagues and professional network. The reputation he'd spent his life polishing didn't just crack, it caved in. He went from respected professional to that therapist. Some older relatives tried to play mediator with the usual forgiveness speeches and family loyalty guilt. I shut it down immediately, told them I appreciated the concern but the conversation was closed. They could have whatever relationship they wanted with her. I was done. After that, it spread quietly. Private calls, side conversations, people making up their own minds. Mom's support network started shrinking. Renee Parker told me relatives stopped returning her calls. Made excuses when she tried to set things up or just went silent. The cousins who used to help with money and favors suddenly had their own problems. Mom tried to claim I ruined everything and she was the victim. It didn't stick. Police reports are police reports. Court documents are court documents. Licensing board actions are public record. Her voicemails and Mason Reed and Aiden Cole's messages were saved verbatim. The pattern was obvious. Mason Reed and Aiden Cole tried defending her in the family group chat, which only made it worse because people could see the same entitled tone I'd already included. They came off exactly as they were. Kids raised to think they were owed support, confused why the brother they never treated like family wouldn't bankroll them. Best part was hearing multiple relatives say they'd been close to helping Mom and the twins financially before they saw the packet. After they did, those doors slammed shut. She'd been working the family for money, and I killed that plan. The fallout wasn't some dramatic explosion. It was just done. Invitations stopped. People were busy. Her usual circle pulled back in slow motion. Then Bradley Hayes' situation got worse. One of the civil lawsuits went to trial. Testimony dragged out years of ethics violations and manipulative behavior with vulnerable clients, including using his position to start inappropriate relationships. He lost badly. The judgment was big enough. Enough. They had to sell the house. The 4-bedroom colonial he'd inherited and never paid for was gone. They ended up in a 2-bedroom apartment in a worse part of town. Mom was working double shifts to cover rent and legal fees. Mason Reed and Aiden Cole were working fast food because they'd burned through connections trying to land better opportunities. And being tied to a disgraced therapist didn't help. After I sent the documentation, I got about 9 months of silence. No harassment, no manipulation, nothing. I thought it was finally over. Then on a cold Friday evening in late November, I pulled into my driveway after work and noticed a car parked across the street. Didn't think much of it at first. Neighbors have guests. But as I got out of my truck, I saw Mom sitting in the driver's seat, watching my house, just sitting there, not getting out, not approaching, just watching. I grabbed my work bag, went inside through the garage and closed the door. Pulled up my security camera feed on my phone. She was still there. 20 minutes passed, 30, still there. I called the non-emergency police line, explained the situation. Someone with a restraining order against her was parked across from my house, lingering over half an hour. She was just outside the 600-foot boundary specified in the order, but I wanted it documented. The dispatcher sent an officer to check it out. 20 minutes later, a cruiser pulled up. I watched through my camera feed as the officer approached her car. They talked for maybe 7 minutes. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I could see her gesturing, probably explaining she was sitting in her car on a public street. The officer came to my door. I stepped out onto the porch. "She says she just wants to talk to you," he said. "Claims it's important. Says she has nowhere else to turn. Asked if you'd be willing to hear her out." I looked past him at the car. Saw Mom staring at me with this desperate look I'd never seen before. Not the manipulative tears from before, just exhaustion and desperation. "No," I said flatly. She had years to talk. Multiple chances to approach this differently. She made her choices. The officer nodded. "That's your right. She's outside the 600-foot boundary, so technically not violating, but I'll let her know you're not interested and she needs to leave the area." He went back to her car. More conversation. I saw her slump in her seat, put her hands over her face. The officer kept talking, probably explaining she needed to leave. Finally, she started her car, but before pulling away, she got out. The officer immediately moved to intercept her, but she wasn't approaching my house. Just stood by her car door, looking at me across the street. "Please," she called out, voice cracking. "Just 7 minutes. We've lost everything. Bradley Hayes can't work. Mason Reed and Aiden Cole can't finish school. We're about to be evicted. We need help." The officer positioned himself between us, told her she needed to get back in her car. "You did this," she continued, voice getting louder despite the officer's warnings. "You turned everyone against us. You destroyed our lives because you're bitter about decisions made years ago. We are family. You're supposed to help." I stood there on my porch completely calm and let her finish. The officer was getting more stern, telling her this was her last warning before he called for backup and she'd be arrested. When she finally stopped to take a breath, I spoke, voice level, carrying across the street. I couldn't care less. Her face wrinkled. "I apologize. I'm very sorry. I was mistaken. Please, I'm begging you. Help us." "Those are just words," I said. "You had over a decade to apologize. You chose silence. Chose to only reach out when you wanted money. Chose to harass me when I said no. You don't get to call that family. The officer physically guided her back toward her car door. She was crying now, saying something about mistakes and still being my mother. How could I be so heartless when they were losing everything? Ma'am, get in your car now or you're going to jail, the officer said firmly. She finally got in, sat there for a few more seconds, just staring at me, tears streaming down her face, then drove away slowly. The officer came back to my porch. You want to file a report on this? It's borderline. She didn't technically violate the order, but the intent was clearly to contact you. Yeah, I said. File the report. I want this on record. He nodded, took my statement and left. I went back inside, locked up, pulled out my phone, texted Renee Parker. Mom showed up outside my house tonight. Cops handled it. I am fine. Her response came immediately. Need me to come over? I smiled and typed back, no, I'm good. Really good. And I sat on my couch and thought about the kid I was at 17 carrying my life in 2 duffel bags. I built everything myself. Renee Parker and my grandparents were the only ones who showed up. I was good.